Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Twisted Talks. I'm Josh.
I'm Tanya.
And this week it is time for Tanya to give a Twisted Talk. So...
It is.
It is indeed.
It is.
It is on this very fine day.
It's roasting. So I'm just going to dive straight in. So the topic of today's Twisted Talk is Ed Gein, also known as the Butcher of Plainfield, and the inspiration for movies like The Silence of the Lambs, Psycho, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, as well as the inspiration for characters like Buffalo Bill and Norman Bates. Now, this case has a trigger warning for murder. It's also a little bit graphic, and it's just overall gross to be
Yeah, I
fucking
remember
honest.
when you said it to me, and I literally just looked up the name. And some of the photos I saw. I was like, yeah, okay, I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah.
I was like, no thanks.
Yeah, the photos will stick with me. They will. I've seen some things since we started the podcast.
Oh, same.
Yeah, it's like between the photos that I saw from the Jack the Ripper case, the autopsy photos of Elizabeth Short, aka the Black Dahlia, and the photos from this.
I saw a photo from last week's case.
Oh, rough.
And I was like,
It's
no.
rough. It's rough.
Well, I say last week to you because it'll be last week's to the listeners, but to us, the case 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, rough.
If
Absolutely
even.
rough. I've not seen from that one, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, like, the photo's not that graphic or that like, really, really bad, but it's just because you know.
you know what happened and how
Yeah.
it happened, and yeah.
But, yeah, photos be traumatising when we're researching sometimes.
Yeah.
More times than not.
And they don't have trigger warnings on them. They really should.
Yeah.
They really should start doing that.
Look at us out here being good, giving all of you trigger warnings when we're being scared on the daily.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, is there trigger warnings for this one?
I've just said them.
Say them again.
Okay, so
I'm not with the program.
murder, graphic, gross.
Murder, graphic, gross.
Yeah. There might be. It's unclear.
Oh, okay.
Josh asked me a question on the down low, guys, but we'll get there. So Edward Theodore Gein was born on August 27th, 1906 in La Crosse County,
What's with all the Edwards?
Wisconsin. I know a lot of Edwards are killers.
Yeah.
A lot of Edwards are serial killers. It's fucking weird.
And
And
sometimes
as well,
they get to
the
change
fact
it
that
up,
his
but
middle
sometimes it's
name
an
is
Edmund.
the fact that his middle name is Theodore just gives me Ted Bundy vibes. But yeah, so he was
I
born
love how
in...
you go Ted Bundy. I was thinking Theodore Roosevelt.
I thought you were going to say Theodore from Alvin and the Chipmunks.
That works too.
So Edward Theodore Gein was born on August 27th, 1906, it's a long time ago, in La Crosse County, Wisconsin. His parents were George and Augusta Gein, and he had one brother, Henry, who was older than him. Now, his family dynamic was interesting, to say the very least, with his father being described as a timid alcoholic and his mother being described as a religious
I've heard
fanatic.
many descriptions of alcoholics in cases, but I've never heard timid.
Timid, yeah.
Remind me to show you a TikTok after this in regards to...
The word timid?
No, the word alcoholic.
Okay. Okay. Cute that you think I'm going to remember.
Fair.
And his mother, Augusta, was described as a religious fanatic, which we will kind of touch on a little bit more in a bit. Now...
Religious fanatic?
Mm-hmm.
And the father was a timid alcoholic?
Yeah.
It was the blood of Christ.
Fair enough. When his father, George, was a child, he had seen his family drown in the Mississippi River
Oh my god.
during a flood. Now, this is obviously extremely traumatic to witness your family drown in a flood
All of
while you
them.
were a child. I can't remember exactly who it was. Now, obviously, this case is set in the 50s, so the information was a little bit sparse. I had to work really hard to get it. I couldn't find much on his dad, but I know I had heard that in an Eleanor Neal video that he had seen his family drown, and I was able to corroborate that with one resource. But it's believed that this trauma is what led him down the road to alcoholism. Now, Augusta would belittle George, both in private and in public, because she viewed him as a weak pushover of a man. So after work, George would visit the pub, he would get drunk, and then he would go home and beat the shit out of his wife. Because with a bit of drink in his system, he felt brave, and in his mind, this was him standing up for himself.
And George was his dad.
George was the dad, yeah.
That's not what I'd call a timid alcoholic.
Yeah, I think he was a timid man, and the people who were describing him were like, oh, he was timid and
Outside
he was
of
an
the
alcoholic. Yeah. And obviously, I don't think it was well known until everything started to come out that he would beat his wife. And in his mind, this was him standing up for himself against the constant belittling and degradation that he would receive from Augusta. So really, it was just a very toxic marriage and a very toxic environment to be raising 2 young children in. Now, it's said that Augusta despised her husband, but she refused to divorce him due to the family's Lutheran beliefs. And I will kind of touch on the Lutheran beliefs as well momentarily. And this meant...
Please hold.
Please hold. Hold the line. And this meant that both Ed and Henry, his brother, grew up in a household dominated by Augusta and by her Puritan preachings about the, quote, sins of lust and carnal desire. She would say that the world was full of evil and that women were vessels of sin, is the exact phrase.
So basically full of self-hatred due to sexism.
It's more than that, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Like,
We'll get
as
there
a
when
woman,
we get
you
there.
surely have to hate yourself to believe that.
Yeah. But
Or
it
to
does,
preach it to that
it does
extent.
all circle back to her religion, her beliefs. She also would say that drinking and immorality were instruments of the devil. Every afternoon, she would find time to read to her sons. But rather than read a nice children's book or a bedtime story, Augusta would read
the Bible.
She would read Henry and Edward verses from the Old Testament. Specifically, those that dealt with themes of death, murder, and divine retribution, which the perfect tales to bolster a child's development, in my opinion. Like,
Yeah.
I don't see how that could go wrong at all.
No, that's totally probably has no contribution at all to what's being covered today.
Yeah, like I love to hear the story of God striking people down for stupid shit before I go to sleep.
I don't know because obviously, well, I know you're not religious either, but was Jesus in the Old Testament?
I don't know.
Like that to anyone who knows religion is going to be like, are they for real? But
and the thing is, I was raised Catholic.
same.
But look, we weren't
like,
devout. We were not devout.
No, but we also like obviously there's Old Testament and New Testament, and I'm like, I can't remember, was the Old Testament like before the coming of Jesus, or
I think it probably was.
Or is the New Testament just like a reworked version of the Old Testament? So he was in both.
I have no fucking clue, man. I have no idea. I honestly don't know. And I would Google it, but my reception is
Well,
always
the only reason I was asking anyway is because it just the whole stories, the way you were saying about stories
and
from
the
the
fact
Bible.
she was saying that humans are riddled with sin, but yet Jesus died for our sins. So
he must have been in the Old Testament, basically.
I don't know. Like,
But the way I was looking at it anyway is just because I remember this Australian drag. I don't know, is he a drag queen or is he just a performer that wears makeup and stuff as well? But had said on national daytime television that, do you know, about how people that saying it's a sin, and he was like, oh, you know where this is going.
I know where this is going.
He
I
was
love
like,
this.
I love Jesus. I love any man that can get nailed to the cross and come back 3 days later for more.
That's not where I thought it was going. I thought you were going to do the whole thing about how
Oh, sorry, no, they can get
say-
nailed 3 times
and come back for more.
and then come back for more, something like that.
But
It was
I
quite
thought
funny.
you were going to do the whole thing about how that story about how like someone was preaching that in the Bible it says homosexuality is a sin. So the response was,
Oh,
do you like
do you
shrimp?
eat shrimp?
Do you eat shellfish? Because the Bible says they're an abomination.
Yeah.
So does that not make you an abomination by
It's
extension?
it ended with if you can eat shellfish, I can suck beep.
Beep. This has been censored for your, I don't know, enjoyment. Oh.
Okay, I'm going
Moving
off topic.
swiftly on.
Moving swiftly forward and back onto the topic.
Yeah, back onto the darkness. Augusta would also verbally abuse her sons, and while Ed idolised her, Henry didn't. If anything, he was concerned about how much Ed held their mother on a pedestal, and he confronted her several times over her treatment of them, which, valid, fair enough. In 1915, the family of 4 relocated from La Crosse, or La Crosse County, whatever you fucking call it, to a farm outside of Plainfield, Wisconsin. And Ed would very rarely leave the farm, with the exception of attending school, where it said that he was a very good reader. Now, this move was at the behest of Augusta, who believed La Crosse, or La Crosse County, to be a, quote, sinkhole of filth.
Well, God help her if she'd seen LA.
It's giving Sweeney Todd, there's a hole in the world. It's a deep black pit, and it's filled with people who are filled with
I don't think
shit.
I ever watched it.
Oh, I watched it once years ago at my nana's house. It was a weird experience. And she also insisted that they live on the farm, as she believed that life in the town would corrupt Henry and Ed, and she didn't want that. Now, even at school, Ed failed to make any meaningful connections or bonds with his peers, and he is remembered as socially awkward and as the boy who would break out in random fits of unexplained laughter. In addition to this, he was an easy target for bullies, as he had a lazy eye and a speech impediment due to a growth on his tongue, I believe.
Ah, that sounds uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was like a massive
both the
growth.
bullying and the growth.
Yeah. Now, Ed would go on to drop out of school after 8th grade, and this would make him around 13 or 14 years old at the time.
Okay, so that's kind of like, you know, maybe in our grandparents' or great-grandparents' age, where they might have left school once they'd only done, like, primary school or done a junior cert. Because some
You
people
say
here...
parents or grandparents. My dad dropped out of school at 14.
Yeah, see, I don't think that was allowed when my mum was in school.
I mean, he didn't really give them a choice. He just said, I'm done with this shit.
No, but I mean, as in legal action would be taken against the parents.
Well, my dad is, I think, 10 years older than your mum, or 13 years older than your mum. Yeah, so he was around 13 or 14 years old. And this was when he and Henry became full-time farmhands at home and took up odd jobs around Plainfield as handymen. They were doing things like hanging windows, patching roofs, painting houses, and repairing fences. Now, I do believe that Augusta was the breadwinner of the family. She had run a grocery store, and when she sold it, she was the one who had purchased the farm for the family to move into.
Okay.
Now, outside of school, when he went to school, Ed would be busy on the farm doing chores, and this also hindered any attempts at making friends. But the biggest hindrance to him making friends was actually Augusta herself. She would scold Ed if he tried to befriend anyone, and would tell him, no matter who it may have been, or whether or not she knew them, had met them, or even knew what they looked like, that they came from a bad family. This would lead Ed to become extremely attached to Augusta, because he really had nobody else to socialise with outside of her and his brother, due to his father being an alcoholic. Now, despite the circumstances, the people of the community generally considered Ed and Henry to be reliable, if a little bit strange. And Ed's bosses, when he worked as a road building contractor, described him as odd but polite and dependable. On April 1st, 1940, Edward's father, George, passed away after a heart attack, and this is when Ed and Henry began taking even more odd jobs to support the family.
Mm-hmm.
Henry would try to encourage Ed to explore the world outside of their home life, but this...
Yeah, like not to just be on the farm. Like.
Yeah, but this would upset Ed. Like, he would become very distraught and very upset at the idea of, like,
meandering
I
out
suppose,
and about.
going against his mother in a way, because she did have quite a hold over him.
Right.
Now, sometime after the death of their father, I'm very unclear on when exactly, Henry, who was obviously the more sociable of the two brothers, began seeing a woman. Now, this woman was nothing short of Augusta and Ed's idea of a worst nightmare, simply because she was a divorced mother of two.
No.
Yeah.
Stop it.
I swear. Divorced mother of two. And they didn't like that. They weren't fans.
That is...
Now, Henry began making plans to move in with his new love, and this is when he really, really became concerned about Augusta's hold over Ed, and he started to kind of criticise her with a new fervour, like a new zest for it. On May 16th...
Because I suppose it was more personal now.
Yeah, like, he knew he was going to be moving out, he was going to be leaving Ed to live at home alone with their mother. He knew what their mother was like, he knew the hold she had over Ed, he knew how much Ed idolised the woman, and I suppose he was concerned for his brother's well-being and his mental health.
And I suppose that even though Ed didn't really listen, but he wouldn't be around anymore to try and put that seed into his head about, like, do you know, why don't you do this?
Why don't you go meet a girl?
Do you know, like, yeah.
She doesn't have to be a divorced mother of two if that's not what you're into. On May 16th, 1944, Henry and Ed were burning brush and vegetation around the farm when the fire somehow began to rage out of their control. And this ultimately led to Henry being found dead.
Oh, God.
Initially, it was believed to be a tragic accident, but we will learn, Ed was not a normal human being. And some people do believe that he was responsible for the death of his brother. Though this is not and cannot be proven. Yeah, basically, grain of salt. This theory mainly stems from the fact that after the fire had been put out, Basically, Ed had gone and alerted people to the fire and said that he couldn't find Henry. And after the fire had been put out, he reported to the police that he had lost track of Henry during the blaze.
But I thought he didn't know where Henry was to begin with.
No, he knew, like, they were burning the brush together.
Oh, okay.
But he basically had said that he couldn't find him during the fire, during the fiasco. So he had said that he had lost track of Henry during the blaze, yet he was able to lead the police, straight to Henry's dead body.
That's a bit
suspicious.
Very suspicious.
Now, Henry was found face down at the site of the fire, and it was determined that he had died of asphyxiation. Now, it could be possible that Ed strangled him. It could be possible that it was asphyxiation due to the smoke.
Yeah, but I feel like... What year was this?
This was 1944.
Okay, but I feel like even given the time, you would know if someone had died of asphyxiation from inhalation or from
there would have been char in the lungs, or there would have been burning in the lungs.
Autopsy would decipher whether it was from
now, it could just be that the sources that I found...
an actual person, you would imagine.
Yeah, like the sources that I found didn't explicitly state... Like, some sources said he was burned, some sources said he wasn't burned, you know, like, there was some confliction there, but
surely he must have had some bit of burning.
Yeah, but he was found at the site of the fire, and according to biographer Harold Schechter, Henry had bruises or injuries of some sort on his head when he was found, and I have seen this mentioned in one or two other sources, but do take that with a cheeky little pinch of salt.
A cheeky little pinch of salt.
We're not trying to spread misinformation.
Maybe match it up with a lemon and a shot of tequila.
Yeah, if that's your thing. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of background information on Augusta, because she is quite crucial to the case. So, Augusta Wilhelmine Lurk was born in 1878 in La Crosse County, Wisconsin. She was one of 8 children born to Amalia and Frederick Lurk.
I like her mother's name.
It's pretty. And Amalia and Frederick were German immigrants from Prussia. Because it was Prussia at the time.
What was?
Right, so bear in mind, I was terrible at geography. I'm not an expert. I'm not that great with history unless it's something that interests me, and this is not a topic I've ever dived deep into. But from my understanding, Prussia was like a German state that was comprised of Germany, Poland, Denmark, Belgium, the Czech Republic, Russia, and Lithuania.
Okay, so it was basically a division of Europe, we'll say.
Yeah, let's go with that.
I'm still skating at the silence.
And then
before. What was?
What was?
I was pure. I was lost.
So deadpan. That's
I might as well have been in Prussia.
Playing with your loop earplugs. Sponsor us, please.
Yes.
So they came from Prussia to America, and they were devout old Lutherans. And this means, and again, I'm no expert, lads. Do not come for me. Basically, they believed. Don't
do it.
Don't do it, please. But basically, they believed that every thought and deed in the human experience is infected with sin. And, let me finish, and born of sinful motives, and that all of humanity deserves eternal damnation in hell.
Well, look, I'm not going to lie. Many of my thoughts are infected with sin.
So that kind of ties back to the fact that she would tell the boys that women were vessels of sin, and just basically humanity is awful and evil, and we should all be dead, and we should all rot in hell. That was what Augusta believed.
So, that's cute.
Mm-hmm. Love that for her.
What was her name again? Augusta. So yeah, follow Augusta for more
inspirational religious fanatic teachings.
Yeah. They're really motivational, guys.
Very motivational.
You're doing great, sweetie. Go burn in hell.
Oh, you had sinful thoughts? Eternal damnation to you. Now, Augusta's father was very, very strict about their beliefs, and he did not ever hesitate to reinforce them with beatings. Augusta married George Philip Gein on December 11th, 1900, and she gave birth to their first son, Henry, in 1902. George worked sporadically as a carpenter, a carpenter. I did not just go to explain carpentry. Yeah, it's when you work with wood, and not in the way Josh usually does.
I was going to make a comment, but you beat me to the punch.
Mm-hmm. So George worked sporadically as a carpenter.
Beat you to the other punch, though, by a few years. for sexually dragging me through the dirt, I'm doing it back. Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Did you just roast me over my breakup on the podcast?
No! No! I was beat you to the punch as in I did the deed a few years before you did the deed.
Okay, that makes way more sense. I was like, Josh!
That is so funny. Anyway.
Probably should take that out, but oh well.
Nah.
It's
Hope you're chuckling at us.
It's giving character development. So George worked sporadically as a carpenter, a tanner, which is basically preserving animal hides, like turning cow skin into leather.
Yeah.
And things like that. And also as an insurance salesman. But due to his alcoholism and his timid nature, he found it very hard to keep a job. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Augusta came to despise her husband, but would not divorce him due to her strict Lutheran beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And this led to her becoming resentful of all men in general. She desperately wanted a daughter, but when she gave birth to Ed in 1906, she decided that he would not... She
desperately wanted a vessel of sin.
Yeah, she did. You're a vessel of sin, but I want one. So when she gave birth to Ed, she basically decided that he would not be like any other man, least of all his own father. And she was very overprotective, and despite her fear-mongering and verbal abuse, she babied him. Augusta told her son that in order to remain loyal to Mammy Dearest...
Oh dear Christ above.
He should remain a virgin because sex was sinful and it would lead him to eternal damnation. Like, Augusta.
I thought everything would lead to eternal damnation anyway, so do the sex.
Augusta, hun.
Do the sex.
Augusta. Do the sex. Just, again, Augusta. You've had 2 kids. Where the fuck do you think you're going?
Do you not want your kids to be with you?
And if the human experience is sinful, stop. He's getting eternal damnation anyway, so he might as well get the right.
Say, actually, I'm going to hell, so I'm bringing my children with me.
Well, like, if he's going to... if he's going to hell, he might as well get the fucking right.
Like, by the sound of things, basically, as soon as you come out the hoo-ha, it's like, yeah, welcome, you're going to hell.
As soon as you can think, you're fucked.
As soon as that swimmer eyes up that egg,
you're done for. It's eternal damnation, instantly.
Sinful spermy thought.
Sinful spermy thought. Now, Ed was obsessively devoted to his mother. And when Augusta became bedridden after a stroke, he threw himself into caring for her while using his downtime to read books on interesting things like grave robbing, head shrinking.
Sorry, what now?
Like, I don't mean like therapy, I mean like the act of shrinking human heads. Like, you know, like the voodoo heads? Like the one from Harry Potter?
Yeah.
It's gonna be a bumpy ride. And also, he would read books about human anatomy.
But now, that's a bit more normal than the rest.
Cute. So all the while, bear in mind, he was, like, taking care of her because she was bedridden.
How can I shrink my mother's head when she passes over?
But this did not stop Augusta from belittling and verbally abusing Ed. Like,
where'd the babying go?
Yeah. Like, I can't move now, so I'm going to be an extra cunt. So on December 29th, 1945, Augusta Gein died of a series of strokes at the age of 67.
Bye.
Yeah, and this is when Ed became even more very strange, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
He left his mother's room meticulously neat and untouched, but allowed the rest of the house to fall into squalor and disrepair. Now, I'm not at all judging this, because at the end of the day, man lost his mother, and grief is, like, in and of itself a very strange process. And I suppose keeping her room tidy
was probably a psychological thing and also a sign of respect.
Yeah, it's like a shrine. But grief is like it's a very weird process, and it does affect everyone extremely differently.
Yeah.
But he basically kept that room and a few other areas of the house that his mother frequently used closed off, and he moved himself into a small bedroom near the kitchen. So these rooms include his mother's room, basically the entire upstairs of the house,
okay,
the living room, as well as the downstairs parlour. Now, after Augusta's death, neighbours began to talk, saying that Ed smelled really bad, and when he would turn up to his little odd jobs, it was noted that his appearance had really deteriorated and he wasn't taking care of himself. Now that Ed had the farmhouse to himself, he could begin really exploring his interests, and that's exactly what he did. That's exactly what he did. He began to fill his days with learning about the atrocities of medical experiments carried out by the Nazis.
Oh, yeah, standard.
He began to study the human anatomy even more in depth. He began to look at porn. I said porn, really weird there. But he never tried to get with a woman or have a relationship or anything. And he began to read horror novels. He was a huge horror genre fan.
Yeah.
When he wasn't doing this, he would do odd jobs as a handyman to support himself financially. And around 18 months after Augusta's death, Ed's nightly visits to her grave took a dark and grisly turn when he decided that it would be appropriate to dig her up and remove her head.
I called it by accident.
You did, which he then took home with him to shrink using techniques he had learned about from his books while caring for her while she was still alive. This was
Why is Mommy on the mantelpiece?
It's a style choice. Now
it's feng shui.
It's feng shui. This was followed by him scanning the obituary pages of newspapers to find women of his mother's age, as well as, like, he would kind of go for women that he felt resembled his mother, because you know how in the obituaries they put the little picture?
Yeah.
And he would then go to their freshly dug graves with the intention of stealing their body parts, and we'll get to the reasoning behind that in a few minutes. But
please, God, don't tell me that's going where I think that's going, but I'm not going to say anything.
You'll see. Now, nobody really thought much about Ed. Like, he was removed from the town because he lived outside of it. He had never made friends, so people kind of forgot he was there, and the ones who knew him or knew of him just thought he was like a grieving oddball. Like, nobody knew or even suspected that he was doing anything untoward or ghastly. Like,
he was just an outcast.
Yeah, he was an outcast. Like, kids thought his house was haunted, you know.
Yeah.
But this all changed in November 1957, when a local woman by the name of Bernice Worden disappeared. 58-year-old widow Bernice was the owner of a local hardware store, and she appeared to have vanished without a trace, leaving nothing behind but a few bloodstains, and it was also noted that the cash register was missing.
The whole cash register?
Yeah, I think the whole cash register.
Why?
It was like the whole cash register, or he just cleared it out. Now, police found that her last customer on the night of her disappearance was none other than Ed Gein, who had stopped in to purchase a gallon of antifreeze.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, it was November, so I would assume it was necessary for the farm or for his car or whatever. Obviously, the next logical step in the investigation was to visit Ed at the farmhouse, but nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared them for the absolute horror that they were about to walk into.
Oh, dear Lord.
And I also just want to say Bernice's son Frank was a deputy sheriff, and I sincerely hope he was not on the scene for this.
Oh shit, the one that went missing, the one that was... Oh,
yeah.
Good Lord. I really hope for that, that he wasn't.
So it was November 17th when Sheriff Art Schley and Captain Lloyd Schufoster travelled the 10-kilometre distance from the town to the farmhouse. Now, in some sources I've seen, they went to the farmhouse, Ed wasn't there, they left, they went back again. But either way, they peered into the kitchen and they immediately saw the body of Bernice Worden. She had been shot dead, decapitated, disemboweled, and was hanging from the kitchen's rafters by her ankles.
Fucking hell.
It gets worse. Buckle up, guys. I tried to keep it as...
It's like it gets worse before it gets better, but it doesn't get better.
I tried not to get too graphic, but I don't think it's possible.
No, exactly.
When they entered the home, they found Bernice's head in a sack and her organs were in a bucket. On the stove sat a saucepan containing a human heart, and Sheriff Schley had to leave the house and vomit after identifying Bernice. Throughout the house, officers found organs in jars.
Love that.
Countless bones, both in one piece and in fragmented pieces.
Standard.
Skulls, like human skulls, were impaled on the bedposts of Ed's bed in his bedroom.
Kinky.
There were bowls and kitchen utensils made from skulls and other bones.
I don't even have a comment for that one.
Mm-hmm. But Ed had not stopped there. Oh, no. No. Ed was something of a creative. And without being too insensitive, he had done some arts and crafts for himself.
Oh, Lord.
So.
Because the utensils weren't enough.
Mm-hmm.
What did he do?
So investigators also found 4 chairs that had been upholstered with human skin.
Oh, that made my skin feel not okay.
A wastebasket, also made of skin.
Ugh.
Leggings made from human leg skin, to be specific. Death masks which is when you remove a face from the skull fully intact and keep it.
Okay.
4 of these were mounted on a wall at eye level. Ed had also fashioned himself a belt made of female nipples.
So am I right in saying that most of all of this is from grave robbing?
Yes.
And obviously grave robbing, including his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And then the only victim that was taken living is... Bernice. We're getting somewhere. Okay, there's more. Great.
So he had made a belt out of female nipples. He had repurposed a pair of lips, like the lips off your face, to be used as a drawstring for a curtain.
Thank God that's where that went.
Yeah. I don't know where you thought it was going, but yeah. A drawstring for a window shade, sorry.
Just think about it for a second. Yeah.
That's what I specified. He also had made a corset out of a female torso, and this did include the breasts. And where was I? He had also made a lampshade out of a human face, which that was fucking horrifying. That one.
How does one even do that?
Like, he made the lampshade out of skin and sewed the face onto the lampshade. Yeah.
Okay.
He had also taken a can and covered the top and bottom with stretched human skin to make a tom-tom drum. He had made a purse out of skin, including the handle, and police found an unfinished hand-sewn shirt made of...
Skin,
you guessed it, well done. There was also various dismembered body parts, including fingernails, 4 noses, and the genitals of 9 different women found in the house. And when I say genitals, I mean vulvas, vaginas.
Yeah.
Not to be graphic, but to be specific. And in the process of searching the house, police managed to solve the case of another local woman who had gone missing in 1954, and that was the case of tavern keeper Mary Hogan. Now, Ed was soon found, I believe, at a neighbour's house, and he was arrested. Just chilling. At first, he refused to speak, but eventually he began to open up. He admitted to killing both Mary Hogan on December 8th, 1954, and Bernice Worden on November 16th, 1957, by shooting them both in the head. And he would tell the police about his nighttime visits to the local cemeteries. He would say that he was in a daze and that he had been stealing the body parts because he wanted to create a woman suit with the express purpose of making it look as similar to his mother as possible.
I fucking knew it.
Mm-hmm. He wanted to make it look as similar to Augusta as possible so that he could slip into her skin. Yeah, that's the face I made too. He said that he had committed grave robberies in Plainfield Cemetery, the Spiritland Cemetery in Portage County, and the Hancock Cemetery in the town of Hancock. Ed's reasoning for murdering Mary and Bernice was that the skin of the women he had stolen from their graves was a lot harder to work with than the skin of a freshly killed human being. Bernice's head had been found in a sack, as I said, with nails driven into her ears and a piece of twine connecting the nails.
Okay.
And when police questioned him about this, he said that he had intended to hang her as a decoration.
That's...
Yeah. He told them that he would wear his skin leggings to the cemetery to dance under the light of the full moon, and would take bodies home to make his lamps, chairs, bowls, and whatever weird shit took his fancy, and that he would use castor oil to preserve the faces of his death masks. I can't even begin
to comprehend where this came from.
Yeah.
Like, I get the whole weird childhood, weird mother, all that, but why the obsession with skin?
I don't know the specifics, but he does get a diagnosis later. So, yeah, he was going to hang Bernice's head as a decoration in his house. Like, he really had, like, no value for human beings at all.
It wasn't even Halloween.
Yeah. And he would use castor oil to preserve the faces of his death masks. He also told them that at home, he would wear one of the death masks. So he would wear one of these women's faces.
Oh, that's... Imagine putting someone
I'm
else...
sorry, but it gets worse. So he would wear the death mask. He would also wear the corset that he had made out of a woman's torso, and he would use one of the vaginas that he had
extracted.
he would basically cover it with a pair of panties, and he would go out to the farmyard wearing all of this. So basically he would like dress up in these women's skin and go out into the farmyard and, I don't know, like pretend to be a woman, dance under the full moon, pretend he was his mother. I'm not actually sure. I don't think he ever explained that. Now, he also gave some packages of venison to people despite not being a hunter. And this has led many to believe that he had actually given them human meat, though there is no concrete proof to substantiate
that's the conclusion I would have come to as
well. Ed had often joked...
And it's a way to get rid of the meat that he doesn't need because he just wants the skin.
Yeah. Now, Ed had often joked to people about having a collection of shrunken heads at home, and once even said to someone that he was working with that Mary Hogan was at his house around the time of her disappearance. But people simply believed that he was odd and that he was making weird jokes. Yeah,
inappropriate jokes, but because he was odd, brushed it off.
Now, initially, the police believed Ed was lying about the grave robbing and that he had actually killed all the women whose parts they had found in the house.
Okay.
On November 25th, 1957, Ed led them to the graves of Eleanor Adams and Mabel Everson at Plainfield Cemetery. And when they dug them up, they were able to confirm that he was actually telling them the truth, as both of the women's coffins were empty. And in the earth above one casket, they had found dentures and a wedding ring. The police investigating the crimes did believe that Ed practiced cannibalism himself, but only one source that I have seen explicitly said that he admitted to this, so I'm not sure how true that is.
Pinch of salt vibes.
But I personally don't see much of a stretch between making clothes and household objects out of body parts, wearing said and eating out of said body parts, and actually eating the body parts, you know?
There's no...
Now, there are also claims that he engaged in necrophilia, though I think he denies this, or has denied this.
Okay, yeah.
Now, according to Ed Gein, there were times when he would snap out of his daze in the cemetery, because remember, he said he was in a daze when he was robbing these graves. But there were times, according to him, where he would snap out of his daze and he would not steal anyone from their grave. And he also claims that there were times and instances where he would feel remorse and return stolen bodies and stolen body parts back to the graves. Now, Ed was given a brief court hearing in January of 1958, and at this hearing he pleaded not guilty to his crimes with an insanity plea.
I mean, I wouldn't call him normal. I don't know. I don't know. I actually don't know.
Yeah. And at this point he was committed to the Wisconsin Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane at Waupun. And this was to assess whether or not he was fit to stand trial, and it was determined that he was not.
Okay, so clinically he must have been incapacitated.
Give me a second. So it was here at this hospital that Ed would be described as, quote, a sexual psychopath, and he would be diagnosed with schizophrenia by a psychologist and a psychiatrist.
Right.
Now, Dr. E.F. Schubert would state that Ed had, quote, abnormally magnified attachment to his mother, end quote, and that this was bordering on Oedipus complex level attachment.
What's Oedipus?
Oedipus was the guy who fucked his mom.
Is that Greek mythology?
Yep.
Of course it'd be Greek mythology. No offence, I love Greek mythology. But like...
Same. I've got 2 different Greek figures tattooed on me. I'm living my best life. Now, it's believed that Augusta's death is what pushed Ed over the edge and acted as a trigger for his crimes. The women that he killed and the graves that he robbed to him represented substitutes for his mother. Now, it would be 10 years before Ed Gein would be considered fit and competent to stand trial, and would be declared so by Circuit Court Judge Robert H. Gulmar in November 1968.
Okay.
Sorry, I continued as if that was part of the sentence, but it was not.
I did that last week.
Yeah, you did.
Or the week before, whichever one.
So, in November 1968, Ed Gein was... Why did I phrase it like that? Was tried for and found guilty of the first-degree murder of Bernice Worden.
Okay.
He was not tried for Mary Hogan's murder, allegedly due to the state viewing it as a waste of money, when they were so sure that they were going to get him convicted for Bernice's murder.
Yeah.
In a separate hearing after his trial, he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. I'm assuming because at the time of the murders, he had untreated schizophrenia. He was once again committed to the Wisconsin Central State Hospital for the criminally insane at Waupun. In 1974, Ed filed a petition for release from the hospital.
I think the fuck not.
On the grounds that he was now fully mentally competent, but this was denied. He tried again 4 years later in 1978 and was denied again. And after this, he was moved to the Mendota Mental Health Institute in Madison. Ed was 72 years old at this time, and soon after, he developed dementia, cancer, and respiratory issues.
Jesus.
Yeah. And he died at the age of 78 in Mendota's geriatric ward on July 26, 1984. He was buried in Plainfield Cemetery between his brother Henry and his mother Augusta.
Oh, so she was put back?
Yeah. Well, he only took her head. But I'm assuming they put her head...
back?
If they were able to find it, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was shrunken. What? What?
No, I'm just like it's so rude. But I'm just just do you know when you get a mental image?
Yeah.
And I just got a mental image of like if they put the shrunken head back, how disproportionate that would be. I'm like, is it more respectful to not put it back?
I honestly don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know how to process what you've just taught me.
But do you get...
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm
not trying to be disrespectful, but I'm just like, the proportions just can... Yeah, okay, anyway. Moving swiftly along.
Yeah. The Gein family farm became something of a tourist hotspot for a short time after his arrest, but it mysteriously burnt down, which was a huge relief to the locals.
That happened in one of the cases I did. I want to say Armand Weiss.
I think it was Armand Weiss, yeah. It is believed that Edward Gein is responsible for more than just the murders of Mary Hogan and Bernice Worden. Some of the female genitals found in his home belonged to younger girls.
Okay.
And it is theorised that these girls may be 15-year-old Evelyn Hartley of La Crosse and 8-year-old Georgia Jean Weckler of
Jesus
Fort
Christ.
Atkinson. Yeah, like that's a big age jump. Evelyn disappeared in October 1953 and Georgia Jean was abducted in May 1947. Neither of these cases has ever been solved and their bodies have never been found.
Yeah.
Now, Judge Gallmar, who was the judge who sentenced Ed and who declared him fit to stand trial, has said that even if Ed didn't kill these two particular young girls, the only other explanation is that he killed two young runaways, as his penchant for grave robbing would not explain the presence of two younger girls' genitals in his home, given that he robbed the graves of middle-aged women who reminded him of his mother.
But who's to say that he
know.
couldn't have, like, if he's all of a sudden going to go for younger living people, why could he not all of a sudden rob a younger grave? You know what I mean?
Well, the two women that he killed were middle-aged, like similar to his mother's age. A couple of years off, but they weren't like teenagers or children.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So why couldn't he, like, either way?
Oh no, sorry, I get what you're
deviation
saying. I get what you're saying now. Yes,
so like,
sorry.
why would he have to go for those younger two?
I picked you up wrong.
I just feel like the odds are fairly equal.
If he's
that like he could just have easily gone for younger graves if he was going to go for younger people in terms of killing real people as well. So I'm like, either or. Yeah. Potentially, we'll never know, but.
Now, Judge Gallmar also believes it's possible that Ed killed two men. There were male bones found on his property, and a man named Victor Travis and his male companion, whose name I could not find, disappeared near the Gein family farm. Travis's jacket and his dog were found near the property.
Male companion, it's giving hate crime.
It's giving hate crime. And so Travis's jacket and his dog were found near the property, and neighbours noted a foul smell emanating from Ed's garden at the time, which again I couldn't find specifics on the timing. But again, he never confessed to these crimes, and we will most likely never know the true number of people that he killed. I, for one, don't believe that he only killed two people. I wouldn't put a number on it, but I think with everything that was found in his house, it's not at all unlikely that he is responsible for more murders, in my opinion.
When he came to the conclusion that he needed, I don't even know how to phrase this, fresher skin to upholster and decorate.
There was a lot found in his house. Like, there was a lot found in his fucking house. And I'm just like, his house must have stank. It must have fucking reeked like something vile.
Fucking hell. New episode name. The Interior Decorator from Hell.
Now that's actually it for today's case, guys. That is the case of Edward Theodore Gein and his...
Oh, that was a fucking wild one.
...strange hobbies.
Yeah, putting it lightly.
Yeah, like, I won't lie, it was quite a difficult case to research in that it wasn't very easy to find resources that I would consider reputable.
Yeah.
But I did it.
But it's been done.
It's been done.
Yeah, no, that was... Oh, my skin, I just feel so like a...
Yeah, and it's the fact that when he was found, he was in the process of sewing himself a shirt.
Just... Day in the life.
Shirt. Oh, he wanted to make a woman's suit so he could slip in his... Yeah, so thanks for listening, guys. Hopefully you aren't too grossed out. I know I am.
I feel so...
I feel icky. I need a shower.
Yeah, well, I needed a shower anyway, I'm not going to lie. But I definitely need one now. Okay.
So, as Josh always says, love and light to you all.
And, yeah, oh my God.
Find better hobbies than this guy, please.
Yeah. And in terms of finding better hobbies, if this is already your hobby, please get help and call the police.
Yeah.
But on that note, yeah.
Yeah, very that.
I was going to say same time next week, but I guess you can listen whenever you want, so...
Same time for us next week.
Yeah.
Although, no, we're doing it different this week, because it was my birthday.
because we're doing it early this week.
It was my birthday, and we're going out tomorrow night, so we said we would be better off to record the day before rather than the day after.
Yes. Smart choices. But yes, so... Yes, love, light, and thanks for listening, and remember, always feel free to send us case suggestions.
And if we can, we will.
Exactly. And also, reviews help, guys. So
Please.
Whatever you listen on, make sure to give us that 5-star button. And if there's a little space to write in and you want to write something nice, then that would be cute.
We love validation.
But yeah, so once again, guys, thank you for all your support. And love, light, blessings, and ciao.
Bye.
Ciao.